Command, for which it was originally intended, but also with RAF Bomber Command. And here it is, taxiing onto the runway now, an utterly exquisite specimen. This aircraft taking off from right to left. As we mentioned at the weather brief much earlier today, it was forecast that the wind would back, so it is now across the runway, which means both ends are actually operational. And here it is, on the roll, the Avro Anson 1. The Anson was the RAF's first aircraft to be a monoplane with a retractable undercarriage. It was intended as a twin-engine coastal reconnaissance land plane, and it was with Coastal Command that it first came into service. 26 squadrons across Coastal and Bomber Commands had aircraft of this type on frontline duties when war broke out in September 1939. Their defensive armament came in the form of just two .303-inch machine guns. They could carry 360 pounds of bombs internally, although you could add a pair of further 250 pound. The frontline exploits of this aeroplane really are brought into such sharp focus when you see just what a slow-flying aircraft this Mark I Anson with a pair of 350 horsepower Armstrong Siddeley Cheetah 9 engines is. Number 500 Squadron, based at Deckling, made the first attack against a U-boat by the RAF of World War II on the 5th of September 1939, just 2 days after war broke out. Then, when British forces were evacuated from the beaches of Dunkirk in May 1940, it was flying coastal patrols in these already obsolete aircraft to provide reassurance to the troops awaiting evacuation. June 1940, a section of 3 Mark I Ansons like this, led by Pilot Officer Pete Peters, was performing one of those patrols when 9 Messerschmitt Bf 109 fighters pounced upon them. Pete Peters slowed his Anson, the Messerschmitts overshot, and 2 of them were shot down by the Anson's guns. No wonder Peters was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and his 4 crew members the Distinguished Flying Medal. Pretty soon the Anson was obsolete on the front line when aircraft like the Lockheed Hudson and the Armstrong Whitworth Whitley arrived. But still it was superior to some of its intended replacements. It was more agile, something we're seeing demonstrated really well here. The crew had better visibility from it. So, for example, when number 608 Squadron received the pretty terrible Blackburn Botha, pretty soon it had got its Ansons back again, much to the pleasure of the crews. Through the rest of the war, the Anson was much used as a light transport aircraft, including as a ferry aeroplane for the Air Transport Auxiliary, as a crew trainer for particularly bombers and other multi-engined types, especially with the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. And they carried on serving as light transports and trainers with the post-war RAF. But this one is the only airworthy example of the Anson that first went to war, the Mark I. Built at the Avro plant at Yeadon near Leeds in 1943. It went on to serve with the Royal Australian Air Force. It was then sold into civilian hands. It carried on flying with various different owners. It went into preservation. But it was a gentleman in New Zealand named Bill Reid who insured the site that we see before us today. He bought the aircraft. He had it restored by himself and a team of dedicated helpers on New Zealand's South Island at his farm in Wakefield. It made its first flight from Nelson Airport on the 17th of July 2012. That Bill and his friends undertook was absolutely exquisite. He decided to finish it as an Anson of number 206 Squadron, a coastal command unit, operating from Bircham Newton in Norfolk on the 5th of September 1939. It represents was shot down over the sea by a Luftwaffe Heinkel HE-115 float plane, becoming the first RAF combat loss of the war. The crew of the float plane spotted the survivors from the Anson in the water and landed to try and pick them up. Of the four crew, only Pilot Officer L.H. Edwards survived, becoming the first RAF prisoner of war of the 1939-45 conflict. When Bill Reid put it up for sale, it was bought by RAF station Czechoslovakia, based at Podhorany Uronova, southeast of Prague, in the Czech Republic, which has a very special mission to pay tribute to the Czechoslovak contribution to the wartime RAF. It already has a fleet of Tiger Moths and a Miles Magister trainer. The aircraft was shipped over to Europe. It was reassembled and reflown at the facilities of a company called Fast Aero at Brascat in Belgium at the end of May last year. And it's a very suitable acquisition for RAF station Czechoslovakia. Many Czechoslovak pilots and aircrew trained on its Ansons. Number 311 Squadron, the only Czechoslovak bomber squadron in the wartime RAF, initially had Ansons in one of its flights for training. Some Czechoslovaks flew them on anti-submarine patrols with Coastal Command. The early post-war Czechoslovak Air Force flew Ansons as light transports. It's gone to a very good home indeed with RAF station Czechoslovakia. What a superb aeroplane, Andy. Gloriously flown by Ricard Santos, its owner.
I'm almost lost for words. I am just sat back reveling in that sight. what a magnificent aircraft, so beautifully flown. And again, just takes us back to that era, those few years that are often forgotten, I think, during the Second World War. Often in aviation we think, oh, it was the Battle of Britain and there was other things after that. No, there was so much going on, and, well, an absolute beauty. I confess I was slightly perturbed